you're a business owner looking for visibility, looking to improve your marketing strategy, podcast guest is definitely worth a look. What's changed for me as a podcast guest, I suppose, in terms of my business is having marketing material that has been able to be deployed, that I've been able to deploy across social media networks, particularly on LinkedIn. And what it's done is it's been able to help me create almost that little bit of distance between my message and my marketing, so that when people are listening, they're just listening to a conversation, but what they're also experiencing is what I know and what I can deliver. But I think in terms of how it's helped to change my business is it's given me marketing collateral, and that marketing collateral can be deployed. And so I'm executing on that so that there's a consistent message out there from me on LinkedIn, which is where I put my efforts. And so that has made life a lot easier in terms of what am I going to post? What's the content going to be? So I choose the video I'm going to use, and then I decide what sort of text, what copy I'm going to write around that to sort of improve the message in terms of people stopping and watching that video. So that's been the biggest shift for me, is that ability to deliver a really good post, showcase my skills. Still building momentum in terms of the inquiry level. I don't think there has been anything directly responsible for inquiries to me via those posts, but I think it's early days. I think there needs to be some consistency over a longer period of time. As we probably know, that's how social media works, before people will start picking up the telephone, but I expect that to be something that will come. So how I feel now compared to how I felt beforehand is, that forward momentum. I think action creates motivation. I don't think motivation always comes first. Sometimes you have to take action and then the motivation will come. And I say that to a number of my clients because sometimes they're stuck. And actually that first step is what's needed, and the motivation then follows in behind. And that's been my experience. So the more I've done this, the more I've realized that it's exciting to do because I'm putting myself out there. I'm not very good at putting myself out there. And I think podcast guest has been the facilitator in that process to enable me to step up and be my best self in some of these podcasts. And then the clips that come out of that I can then post that actually sort of shine the light on the things that I do and how I do them. So it's been a good positive change because it's helped from a mindset point of view. It's built in, certainly that self-belief. Every time I talk about these things, it's reinforcing that I know these things. And it's just a matter of time before the dominoes start falling from the positive effect that these posts have over time. I think they probably need to have a conversation with podcast guests and just ask all the right questions, and those being, well, what can you do for me? What does that look like? What's the investment? Over what period of time? So just all those due diligence questions that you would expect in any transaction. But beyond that, it's more about the relationship and, where else could this go and what does that look like as well? So, it's exploring all the opportunities and understanding what you're getting into and what you're getting out of it. And I think podcast guest makes that very, very clear. It's very transparent. There's no hidden agenda. It's literally, what can we do to help your business? And so that's the main focus of the process and the program. So just asking the right questions and leaving no stone unturned. And I think part of that might be asking, can I speak to some of your previous clients? So I think that's a really good endorsement of any business, to be able to send people to clients and say, well, what was your experience? And I'd be more than happy to speak to anyone who was looking to work with podcast guests, because I can speak from the heart in terms of how good the process has been, what the experience has been like, and how that's been in that to change in terms of myself and my business. In terms of hesitations of signing up, I did have reservations. I did have hesitations. It wasn't something that I just ran into at full speed. And I think that's probably understandable from anybody's point of view. If they're working with a new collaborator, there's always some hesitation, right? And I think understanding what's involved, understanding what the commitment is in terms of financial commitment, but also time commitment, And I had to process those things. And I probably am an overthinker. So from my point of view, I probably spent a lot of time umming and ahhing as to whether it was the right thing to do. But ultimately, that can go on for a week or it can go on for a month. But ultimately, you've got to take that leap of faith and say, right, well, let's try this program. Let's see how it goes and review it after a certain period of time. And that's what we did. And you don't know until you try. And I think it was something that my business needed. So it wasn't like it was a nice to have. It was as a really important aspect to my marketing strategy. And so, I think most people would be in the same boat. But I think, like I said, talking about due diligence, making sure you've checked all those boxes and found out a little bit about the organization that you're working with, but also previous customers. And I think that will give comfort to people who are sitting on the fence, know they need to do it, but aren't sure whether to pull the trigger yet or not. In terms of the value of the package, I think it's very, very good value. I think that value started to appear once I was receiving the product of those interviews. So they'd been chopped up, edited, cleverly put together so that they were nice sound bites that weren't too long. And so for me, that was evidence that I was getting some value for money. And I liked the fact that I've now built a little library, which I do want to expand. And each time I go and schedule all of my posts, I go, right, what's the message I want to give today? And I've got this library to choose from. I go, I'm going to talk about sleep this time. Or I'm going to talk about mindfulness. Or whatever it may be, I've got this library which is expanding. And so that's where I saw the value, because it meant that I could deploy this content when I was ready to deploy it. All the work had been done for me in terms of the editing, the sound, the picture, and even the words that run along the bottom of the page, and I've forgotten what that's called. Captions. They're called captions. And so that was evidence enough for me that I was investing in my business, that I had some collateral, and so it felt as though it was good value, and I would say it is good value. And like I say, the amount of time that is taken to create those things, I am very aware. I've done the most basic editing and probably not very skilled, but the amount of time that takes is obviously considerable. So in terms of value for money, it's felt pretty good. For me, this is a fairly new experience, so I haven't got a lot to compare it with. And I think down the track, I'll be able to look back at it and have a more informed view of it. But in terms of organizing appointments, finding the right podcasts, and then doing the editing work, which I've just talked about, that all takes time. And in terms of being able to then use that recording for my own purposes is really good value. So I think the way the package is structured at the moment is really good. And at this stage, there probably isn't anything I can think of that would be a change or an improvement. I think what it's doing now is what it's designed to do, and it's doing it well. I think my problem, and I don't like the word problem too much, but I think more about things like as a challenge, or my endeavor. My challenge is to grow my corporate business, and I think Podcast Guest has certainly started that journey. I don't think it's fully solved. Otherwise, I would have a long list of clients knocking down my door, which is ultimately the goal. And I think I talked about having a wait list. That was probably one of my goals, is to have the wait list and say, yes, I can come and see you, but not until next year. So if I'm in that position, then I would definitely say Podcast Guest has delivered for me. But at the same time, it's early days. We're only a few months into this process, and I think with more water under the bridge, I can probably come back and say yes to that question. Working with Mina from Podcast Guest was a good experience. And I think I alluded to this earlier. I'm not necessarily very good at blowing my own trumpet. I don't think Kiwis generally are. They're head down, get on with work. And if someone else blows their trumpet for them, fantastic. But we're not a nation, and I consider myself a Kiwi, even though I've still got a bit of a British accent. Not very good at blowing our own trumpets. So when you have someone like Mina from Podcast Guest who comes in to work with you, and you work alongside that person, they can see the things that you're good at better than you can yourself. And so that was a delight, because it meant that we were heading in the right direction, because Mina was able to identify those things and go, look, these are your strengths, these are your strengths, these are your strengths. This is how we'll package it. This is what it looks like. This is what you say. And so even though I could have worked that stuff out for myself, it wouldn't have been as good as if someone had come in and done that for me. And that's really where the gold is in terms of working with me from a podcast guest. In every business, you have to have a solid marketing strategy. And even Coca-Cola, which we all know is a dreadful product, has incredible marketing, and that's why they sell so much Coca-Cola around the world, right? So it doesn't matter what the product is, it's all about the marketing. And if you don't have a strategy, you're not going to be successful. Every business needs to cut through the noise so that it can be seen, heard, and then build a relationship with potential clients. So if you're a business owner looking for visibility, looking to improve your marketing strategy, podcast guest is definitely worth a look.